Hi, my name is Patricia. I decided to do this video about ADHD and thyroid problems following a recent diagnosis of ADHD and a personal experience I've lived in the past few years. I'm making this video hoping that it can help anyone going through the same things because when I was having issues, I tried to Google information about having both and did not find anything at all. There's a lot of information out there about getting misdiagnosed. So if you have a thyroid issue and they misdiagnose you for having ADHD or vice versa, but there's no information about having both. So I thought that perhaps I could tell you guys my story, give you a bit of information of what I went through, and possibly if you can recognize yourself in the situation I went through, it might help you to get more information, challenge your doctor, and hopefully somewhere in there feel better and be able to move forward and have a better quality of life. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about, at the beginning, about my thyroid problem. I've had thyroid problems since, I'd say 1999. That's when I got diagnosed. Something important to keep in mind is that I already had another autoimmune disorder. I found out later that when you have one, it's very common to get a second one. So in 99, I go to the doctors, they take a blood test, they realize I have hypothyroid. They also see that I have a goiter, and they put me on Synthroids. The following 20 years, I'm going to see my doctor once a year. I'm taking one blood test to test my TSH, my thyroid levels. And then if it needs adjustment, they increase or decrease the dose. And that's how I'm following up with my thyroid. Looking back today, what I find surprising or what shocks me is that you get diagnosed with a problem that's very common. I don't know the percentage, but I think like 80 or 90% of women do have thyroid problems. They prescribe you a little pill and tell you check it once a year, and you're satisfied with that information and you just take it, and you kind of understand generally that having hypothyroid is that your metabolism is slow. Excuse me. That when it goes into hypothyroid, you get extremely tired. When it's time to go take your blood test, really, is when your legs start hurting, when you get a little bit moody. Most of the time, I wouldn't realize I'm moody. Someone would point it out to me, and then I'd be like, okay, wait, I've been tired, my legs hurt, and I'm moody. Oh, gotta call my doctor and take that blood test. So I would do that, take the blood test, and they would adjust my Synthroid dosage. It would take 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and life would continue as normal. It's interesting that when you get diagnosed with a thyroid problem, the doctor doesn't take the time to sit you down and explain to you all the symptoms that can come, what you should consider a flag, and also give you an idea of other thyroid problems that can happen, like Hashimoto, something very important to look into. The symptoms they don't tell you about, they tell you that you might be tired, but they don't tell you that you can get symptoms of depressions. I've said it, but your legs hurt. You have mood swings. You can get eczema. I would get eczema pretty much all the time at the same time as I had thyroid issues, but I never put the link together. They don't talk to you about intolerance to hot or cold. They don't tell you that you start losing some hair, like you start when you're brushing your hair and stuff, a lot of hair falls out. They don't tell you that it can cause anxiety. And they don't talk to you about your diet. Through 2019, I realized that by cutting gluten, cutting dairies, my thyroid levels are more balanced. It makes a difference, and you feel better inside. So, my recommendation to anyone with a thyroid problem is look into it. Even though it's not the end of the world, most people have it. You need to be able to recognize what the major symptoms can be if things get off balance. It's not as simple as what they tell you when you meet them, if they even tell you anything. Um, so, any problems that you have, I think you should just dig into it like you're doing a major research, get all the information so you're aware. So I'm going to tell you a bit about my story. So everything was fine for 20 years. I'd say in 2017 is when I started having some problems. It wasn't with my thyroid. It wasn't with ADHD. I started having gallbladder issues, but I didn't know it was gallbladder, so I was sick. I couldn't eat much anymore. Um, I was I was throwing up a lot. I definitely waited way too long to figure out what was wrong with me. I definitely waited way too long to get the surgery done. Um, but through that time, um, I was struggling. Um, I was crying a lot for no reason. I felt like everything in my life was such a big mountain. I mean, I had to do a wash, and it felt like such a big task to do. Um, I wasn't myself anymore. So I went to see my doctor probably in 2018 or maybe end of 2017. I don't remember when, but I went to see her and basically told her something's wrong with me. I'm gaining a lot of weight and I haven't really changed what I'm eating. I'm eating the same. But also I'm crying for no reason. Everything is huge. I don't feel like myself. And my doctor basically told me, Patricia, stop eating. And if you want, I can prescribe you antidepressant pills. And anyone who knows me knows that I'm not a depressed person. I'm not. I don't. I don't get depressed. Um, so it didn't make sense to me, and I was so out of energy. I didn't challenge her. I just kind of said, "Oh no, thank you." I refused the antidepressant because I didn't feel like that was the problem. Um, and I just went home basically and stayed in my little bubble. I was in a bad work environment. The where I was working, there was a lot of uncertainties. Eh, they were not doing well, which didn't make me feel well. Um, and Everything was a struggle, and I was just trying to survive in my little bubble. Um, Back to the gallbladder. I think in May or June, I ended up getting the surgery, getting my gallbladder removed. So when you go into surgery, the same day they take a blood test, they make sure everything, your levels of everything is fine. One of the things they were checking was my thyroid, which is pretty standard, which was at a normal range. And something I found out with time also about the thyroid is that normal range varies. First of all, the normal range in Canada and the USA are not the same number. And the other thing to retain is that your normal level might not be the same as mine. And a normal level doesn't necessarily have to fit within the range that they say it is. So keep that in mind. If you Google it and look into it, you'll find information on the net. And during that surgery, the surgery went well, but when I came out of surgery, they had problems with getting my heart going at the regular rate. I stayed in ICU for a couple of hours. Um, it ended up being okay, but another symptoms of having thyroid problems is having problems with your heart. So that was kind of a flag that I didn't see. I was more concerned about, oh my God, like I'm already having problems with my heart, but it was linked to the thyroid. And I went back home And that was resolved. I felt a lot better, but that was more like the stomach issues and all the problems that the gallbladder can bring you when you have stones. Um, but that summer is when I started having major thyroid problems. I went from hypo to hyper to hypo. In August 2018, I was starting to have very high anxiety to the point I was sweating. I couldn't feel a side of my face, my arm, my fingers were tingling. It was summertime. I had huge intolerance to hot. I mean, being outside for 10 minutes felt like I was in an oven at boil. Big mood swings. I was also, I believe, maybe aggressive verbally in my reactions. Um, there was a change in my behavior, which I didn't understand because you're well, and it's my emotional way of react, but I was stuck in my bubble, and I was just trying to cope with everything that was happening that I didn't understand, and I couldn't get out of that bubble because I didn't see it, I didn't understand it. It's a big struggle. um, and there were definitely symptoms of depression in the way I reacted, but it wasn't necessarily a depression. So I went for a test in August. And yeah, it was so hyper. I was very close to a coma, and they had to actually reduce my synthroids from a few levels, which is not recommended. So huge impact on, it's very hard on the body and the mind. You're basically changing your hormones level very fast, too fast, not gradually. And between August and I think my thyroid levels ended up being fine again in January. So you're looking at about 6 months of not feeling good and trying to adjust. And there's the physical side, but there's also the emotional side. Um, that being said, all these problems obviously affected my relationship. And in December, I ended up going to see a shrink. Um, Trying to make sense of everything. We did a lot of cognitive behavior, so how you react emotionally to things and little tricks on how to spot it and improve it. But basically, 2019 was really all about um, learning more about the thyroid, the effects it has on you, and helping me get a better self awareness of my situations. I changed my diet. I started doing more exercise. I started to balance my life better. There's a lot of work done in 2019, not necessarily just to the thyroid, but where I saw it affected me. Part of it is the thyroid, the other part is your own coping skills. Great investment to do towards yourself, by the way. Um, and then near the end of 2019, I went to see another psychologist for other reasons. And after speaking with him for 10, 15 minutes, he looked in and said, I think you have ADHD. And if you want, I specialize in ADHD and I can help you um, feel better and give you tricks. So my first thought was like, ADHD. Like, I always thought I had ADD, maybe dyslexia. I'm not hyperactive. So my first reaction internally was, okay, this guy just wants to tag me, wants to make a few extra bucks. So I just told him, okay, I'll think about it. And I remember I left in my car that day and I was thinking, and I said, you know what? I'll go educate myself. So I went online, and that's when I started Googling a lot about ADHD and thyroid problems. Could not find anything. What I could find though was you can get misdiagnosed for if you have a thyroid problems, they can think you have ADHD, or if you have ADHD, they might think you have thyroid problems. But there was no information about having ADHD and thyroid problems. Um, so then I started questioning myself, do I really have thyroid problems, or maybe I have ADHD? A lot of questions. I started to Google a lot about ADHD, although I had a very good idea what ADHD was because I had a foster kid years ago who had ADHD. The research you do when you do for yourself or someone else is completely different. So I started gathering information. I looked at the symptoms of ADHD, and some of them could kind of fit, not completely, but could kind of fit according to my own understanding of myself. Um, and that's when I thought on my own. I said, you know what? I'm going to contact a neuropsychologist, ask for a full evaluation to figure out what's wrong with me. I've always thought I had ADD. I always thought I had dyslexia. Um, maybe I'm a nutcase. Like, who knows? Let's get this evaluation done so I can find out what's going on and hopefully feel better somewhere. So I went to the neuropsychologist. I did the exam. It's an 8-hour exam, so it's a very hard exam. They'll check your IQ. They'll check your hyperactivity, your impulsivity. They'll check how you absorb information, how you can retain information. They check a bunch of stuff. It's a lot of them. A lot of the tests, it's exercises, so you can't wiggle your way around it because they're checking different things on different tests without telling you what it is. They also ask you why you're taking that test, what's your main objective. So it's interesting. They'll really understand what you're looking to get out of doing this test, especially for adults, because as adults, I mean, we're not kids anymore. We don't have 100 years left. So the evaluation that they do it to help you get the answers you're looking for also. So I did the whole test. You wait about a month, and a month later they call you. They have a 30-page document. So they gave me a 30-page document on Patricia. A very hard document to read. You're in your 40s. You believe that you know yourself fully and that you understand why you're a certain way or why you react a certain way. But when you read that document, you really get in the fine details of information you've never thought about. The information they give you, you're able to relate with certain events in your life or certain reactions you've had. So when they gave me the report, they really explained to you everything in details. And the report at the end stated that I definitely have ADHD with hyperactivity and impulsivity. What's interesting is that when you read up on ADHD, you think that ADHD, the hyperactivity, is only physical. What you don't know is that when they discovered ADHD and they did all the research and took people to test things out, back then they thought it was a condition that only boys would have. They didn't consider women. So all the primary research that was done on ADHD was only done on boys. What I didn't know is that for women, hyperactivity is usually mostly in the brain. You will, I shake my legs all the time. I fidget my fingers, but in my behavior reaction, I'm not necessarily hyperactive, but my brain is. Through that test, also, they realized that I have a moderate anxiety. I have anxiety. And in the results, the way I did the test, the way I answered it through the day, because they test different things during the day, they realized that my ADHD affects my anxiety a lot. And then on the last page, there's a bunch of recommendations. There's, apps you can use to track certain behaviors. They'll recommend, they recommended for me to take ADHD meds because they believe that that's going to help slow down my brain and help reduce the anxiety. They recommend doing some coaching with a psychologist that specializes in ADHD to get tricks and improve the quality of life. So when I got all these results and all this information, it's a lot, but I was happy that you could finally put a name and reasons for certain things through my whole life. The next few days was hard in a sense where I came back home satisfied. I was happy I got the test done, and then the next day I cried a bit because I you realize some events in your life that you thought you understood and you didn't understand. So it's kind of like you're rediscovering yourself. You're a lot of things that you thought was not necessarily. So it's like your whole vision changes. So anyways, I got home. I sent a copy of the report to my psychologist who specializes in ADHD coaching. And I said, hey, you know what? You were right. I do have ADHD, and I totally want to take you up on the sessions. I want to feel good. I want to understand this thing. So I went to see him. And what was interesting is that he had spoken to me before, so he had a good idea of who I was. Um, he was able to explain to me in a different way the results, but he was able to explain to me within a few sentences um, where my anxiety started. So it started as a child. He was also able to tell me that the biggest reason of my anxiety is my high expectations towards myself and others, and that he explained to me how ADHD kicked into all this this reaction is that I really care about what people think. Which, if you would have asked me that question a few weeks ago, I would have said no way. Like, I don't really care what people think. Normally, like everyone, but not to the point it prevents me from doing things. But that's not true. I have such high expectations of myself, and they believe that because I knew I had some weaknesses, even as a child, I always tried to cover those weaknesses. And when I would get in a situation where I felt like other people could see that weakness, my anxiety would rise, and the ADHD, the fact that my brain goes so fast, would increase that anxiety. So my psychologist also agrees that I should not be taking antidepressant to reduce the anxiety. Believes that I should be taking ADHD meds to help slow down my brain, but continue doing the coaching with him to help me improve my behavior. When he gave me this information, and it's funny because sometimes you don't even realize what stresses you, what doesn't. The way he delivered the message and the way he gave me that information, I literally felt like there was a big weight that came off my shoulders. I felt so relaxed inside, like everything made sense for the first time, and it was new information. He gave me a few tricks on, what I can do to improve my life in links to anxiety. And I mean, right away from that moment, within the next 4 days, when stressful events would happen, I would recognize it faster, and I was starting to try and deal with it differently. So just that information can have a big impact on the way you react and the way you deal with things. Less than a week after that meeting, I went to see my doctor to discuss the medication, shared with her the neuropsychologist evaluation, his recommendation, shared that my psychologist's recommendation also, and discussed the medical, like the meds option for me. She also agreed that antidepressant was not the good way to go for me. We discussed different options of medication, chose one medication together, and I actually started that medication last week. On the first day I took that meds, and it's very low dosage because you start 1 week on a low dosage, then 2 weeks on a bit higher, and the fourth week you start with a higher dosage. So it can be a long road, and it can turn really good or it can turn really bad. There's risks. Um, the first day I took that medication, I saw, I felt a change right away. Um, Someone at work told me, actually, the first day that I took the med, that she felt like I was calmer. She felt um, I was more focused in a sense. And she said that usually when I work, I shake a lot. And she said, "You're shaking less." I could feel my brain was not thinking as fast. It's still thinking a lot, um, but huge difference. And this is the low dosage. So it kind of confirms what the evaluation was saying, what my psychologist, what my shrink was telling me. Um, it's less than a week. It's a strange week because I've been basically reacting or thinking differently, and I'm also at the same time observing myself. It's something that's very hard, and I didn't imagine it being hard, but it's kind of scary because you're rediscovering who you are or how you behave. There's a fear that things will go wrong. You question yourself as to, well, you know what? I used to be very quick, witty, fast, funny. Am I going to lose that side of me? Am I going to become a different person? There's a lot of questioning. I'm very lucky. I have a lot of really good friends who have been more than supportive of all the steps I'm doing and what I'm going through, and they're there to listen, and it's awesome. But at the same time, people have their own lives, and I don't think that people see everything or all the changes that I'm going through. I think it's much bigger for me because I'm living it and there's a direct impact to me. Um, I believe that I'll be seeing a lot more changes than the people around me will see. But it's definitely worth it. It's worth doing the exercise. It's worth spending that time. But during the past week, basically, ever since I went to see the shrink and I took the meds, um, you feel very lonely. You feel you don't understand yourself, so it's hard to talk to other people about it. It's hard to understand what you're going through, and that's why I really want to put a highlight. I think the ADHD coach, psychologist, is very helpful because I don't think it's an easy process to do. And although friends and everything is awesome to have and you're able to speak with them, I think the psychologist who specializes in ADHD will be very helpful during this transition, during this understanding of all the changes that are happening in your life, and they'll help you improve your quality of life. So yeah, so it's been, less than a week that I've been on the meds. I've definitely believe I'm taking the right road. Um, I'm not sure if this is going to be the last video I make or if there will be others. I want to make sure that the information I give is pertinent and useful. I think that the message I'm trying to give to people is you're not alone. Use all the tools that you have. Don't find excuses not to look into conditions that you have. If you want to lose weight, but you're not going to gym, you're not going to see a change. So it's kind of the same thing for your own wellness. If you having issues, problems, struggles, look into it. The worst thing that's going to happen is that you'll lose a bit of time doing it, but it's not a waste of time because it's you. You're important. There are a few, there's actually one group on Facebook that is especially made for people with ADHD and Hashimoto, which is a thyroid disorder. So you might want to look into that. Um, but yeah, I hope this video is helpful for anyone. And maybe it's helpful also for anyone that's living with someone living through this. It's very hard to understand. My suggestion is when there's an issue, go see a shrink, go discuss it, and challenge everyone, because the only person that knows is you. And when you feel something's off, dig into it. You're worth it. And that's it. I hope your journey goes well, and bon courage. Thanks.